Now, Labour has been accused of an act of cowardice after MPs voted to block a national inquiry into grooming gangs. MPs voted by 364 to 111 against Kemi Badenoch's call for a new probe into the scandal. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says victims want action, not delays. Let's speak with Jack Elsom, Chief Political Correspondent at The Sun, live at College Green. I know you've written a lot about this as well, Jack. The debate continues in the House of Commons. It was always going to end like this in terms of that vote, of course, because of the thumping majority that Mr Starmer had. What would we call it? High drama in the Commons last night?
I think so. I mean, the debate itself was incredibly fraught, as this issue is, although in terms of the outcome, it was par for the course. Like you said, Keir Starmer wielded his massive majority to crush this Tory bid. I think a couple of things are going on here. In terms of the last night's vote, there was a bit of political chicanery on the part of the Conservatives. They, without getting too technical, tacked an amendment onto a secondary reading of one of Keir Starmer's flagship pieces of legislation called the Children and Wellbeing Bill, which meant that if this amendment had been allowed to pass, the entire legislation would have been torpedoed and wouldn't have got another hearing in the House of Commons. And so that was going to be always unpalatable to Labour. What will be interesting now is to see that, because the Conservatives said they're going to keep going with this, and so they're going to put amendments down, other legislations, maybe use an opposition day debate to force this vote. But what it doesn't do is obscure from the fact at all that Keir Starmer is blocking a national inquiry, and he has been very open about that. But what this does, this vote, is put it on the public record. Yeah. And so you're already seeing Labour MPs wake up in their constituencies with Tory-created leaflets and advertising saying your MP voted to stop an inquiry into grooming gangs. That is very, very damaging for lots of Labour MPs, especially those who've got quite thin majorities in the Red Wall, where this issue really seems to be of very much prevalence.
There is sort of word on the street, Jack, that Mr Starmer is finding some new wiggle room on this. Now, I don't know if we can confirm that in any kind of way, that there may, after all, be something that might happen. Any word on that?
It was interesting because he stood at the dispatch box yesterday and said that victims want action and not the delay of a future inquiry. Not long after that, the Prime Minister's official spokesman said that they are open-minded about calls for future inquiries, if that is what the victim wants. Now, it's incredibly complex, this, because there's not one uniform victim group who are calling for anything either which way. Some victims say they want to get on with the recommendations of the J report. Some victims are very vocal about saying that they don't feel they've had their day in court and they want a proper inquiry specifically into these grooming gangs, because the J report sort of was much wider, wasn't it, in terms of the child sexual abuse going on right through the country. Jess Phillips then seemed to open the door to an inquiry, didn't shut one down, Lisa Nandy the same. And so overnight there was a feeling that there was a bit of a shift in position on this. However, then David Lammy came on the airwaves this morning and said that Keir Starmer had ruled one out. So it does seem either way they're in a bit of a mess with this one. They don't seem to be wanting to totally shut the door on an inquiry, because I think that they would realise how bad that would look. But the problem is, by not saying either way for absolute clarity, they are causing a bit of confusion with this. And when it comes to a case so serious as this, the last thing you want is a government looking like they're in a bit of a tailspin.
Indeed. Jack, thank you.